Can esports be sports? This question divides opinions in each setting it gets brought up in. The stigma behind gaming was once deep-rooted, with the thought of a person playing video games as a waste of their time. Yes, a person sitting down and passing time looking at a screen doesn't get the blood flowing like Ronaldo would on a Saturday afternoon, but for that person, it might be their form of exertion. It is understandable in the past why parents might not let their kids sit down and game for a couple of hours, as up until 15 or so years ago, there was no real reward for excessive or competitive gaming. Now known as esports, those who excelled at the game they played had a target market minuscule in comparison to the current esports climate. On screen now, you can see an example of an esports tournament held on Halo 3. From the quality of video, the box TVs, and the obvious style of the mid-2000s, this was the raw beginnings of what we now associate with esports. To compare, here is a short video showcasing what we know as esports today.
What in God's name is that from Sticks?
How have they done that? They came back all the way! All the way!
What do we think of LG? What do we think of Sheet? Thank you.
With the evolution of games consoles and the release of consecutively successful games, gaming has evolved from a niche interest to one of the world's most popular entertainment sources. Not only has gaming become popular, but esports has grown exponentially in the past decade, with various games bringing in viewership and creating new fan bases. Organizations have formed as a result and house some of the largest names in this new contemporary media. Examples being Optic Gaming, FaZe Clan, and 100 Thieves, just to name a few. The ways in which esports are played vary, with the largest of esports based on first-person shooters. The most popular is CSGO, which had its largest viewership in 2021, with 2.7 million concurrent viewers for the final of the PGL Stockholm Major. Closely following is Valorant, which had over 1 million concurrent viewers at its recent Stage 1 Masters in Reykjavik. The number of fans of esports has been ever growing in recent years, and this incredible viewership is testament to that. But to compare esports to real sports can be difficult. While yes, there are games that have a real life counterpart, many are incredibly unrealistic and do not perform well. For example, EA Sports FIFA is one of the top selling games each year, and due to its large player base, it would be expected to have a popular esport. But it doesn't. Perhaps it's down to the player controlling all 11 on the pitch instead of a singular point of view, or that the attention span required to enjoy watching a match on FIFA just isn't there. You can't compare a game like Call of Duty to its real life counterpart because that's just war. I don't think that people play Call of Duty to satisfy their need for battle, at least not many, but there is one specific outlier which does closely resemble its real life counterpart. F1 2021 is the current release of the Formula 1 game. Available on all major platforms like PlayStation, Xbox and Steam, the game is available to the majority. A casual player is able to sit down, choose their favourite Formula 1 team or driver, and race against simulated bots or real players. For a more dedicated player, racing wheels, pedals, and even full racing rigs are available to purchase to help the person fully immerse themselves in the game. The game initially may be quite daunting to some, as there are specific layers that one must understand to perform well. On screen, you can see that the game is not all about accelerating and braking, but of tyre management, timing, fair racing, battery management, and so much more. For example, In real Formula 1, the drivers must change tyres at least once per race due to their starting tyres degrading lap by lap.
There's only halfway. These tyres don't feel like they're going to make it to the end now. I think I'm in big trouble, guys. Left front is dead.
In the game, there's the same concept. Every lap you complete, your tyres get slightly worse by losing grip and slowing down your lap times. To fix this, you must enter the pits and change your tyres, which, depending on the length of the race you're competing in, may be your one and only stop. Add on top of this the inclusion of a racing wheel with force feedback, pedals and an immersive gaming rig, it is easy to see how the Formula 1 game can closely resemble its real life counterpart. I mentioned earlier how you can't really compare a game like Call of Duty to its real life counterpart, as it's just real war, and hopefully now you can see how a simulator racing game can be looked at and compared more closely. I do want to mention that I'm not trying to say that driving in F1 2021 makes you as talented as a real Formula 1 driver. Yes, a lot of the mechanics you have to master in game are also relevant to driving a real Formula 1 car, but there is a lot more focus, preparation and sheer talent required to find yourself in one of the 20 seats available on the Formula 1 grid. Racing in Formula 1 can be considered as the peak of motor racing, with only 20 seats available each year and most filled with long-term contracts. It is considered one of the most extreme sports in the world. Playing in the background now is some highlights of what Formula 1 drivers must do when competing on track, and it is clear to see that to compete against the best, you must be one of the best. Due to the serious amount of money required on top of the tremendous talent necessary to race with the best, it is understandable as to why many look to fulfill their racing fantasies on games such as F1 2021. Like all esports, competitors compete against one another to get to the highest level possible, which in this case would be racing in the F1 2021 Esports Championship. To get to such a high level requires not only incredible determination and practice, but also a hunger to win. Unfortunately, I am not of the talent required to race at such a high level, so I had to look elsewhere to get the opinion of someone who knows what it takes. Coming third in the 2021 F1 Esports Championship with 2 race wins, 1 second place, and then 3 third place finishes, ending the season on 162 points, Lucas Blakely spent 2 hours of his time discussing the ins and outs of competing at the highest level possible in F1 Esports. Coming into the 2021 F1 Esports series, how did you find yourself preparing and getting yourself ready for the season coming up ahead?
So for 2021, I poured, the amount of hours and detail, and I literally stripped everything down to the bare bones and worked my way back up, from on the settings, looking into every area of the setup I could, of the car itself, which is always a massive factor because you can only go as quick as your equipment or your settings will allow you, but equally you need to be able to get the best out of it yourself. So I don't think I think most people watching wouldn't understand everything that goes to get to that point. I mean, if people seen it from my perspective, I would love people to see it from my perspective, the journey that it takes to get to this point, because then they wouldn't be so judgmental on the esports as a whole.
Now that we know what it takes to compete at the highest level in F1 esports, the question of how good are esports drivers compared to a real Formula 1 driver can be asked. Now, unfortunately, there is no evidence that an esports driver could even compete against a Formula 1 driver, as the esports drivers' experiences are based in their bedrooms. Until February 2022, this was the case, until Lucas Blakely and a select few other simulator racing drivers were invited to Sweden to compete in the Race of Champions. The Race of Champions is a racing event putting different motorsport champions against each other in a variety of different racing events in order to find out who the overall world champion is. Coming second in the E-Race of Champions, Blakely was partnered up with winner Jarno Opmeer, his friend, foe and current 2-time world champion of F1 esports. Their opponents in the tournament? Current Formula 1 driver Mick Schumacher and 4-time Formula 1 world champion Sebastian Vettel. For Blakely, this was his opponent.
Sebastian Vettel is a Grand Prix winner for the first time. He's the youngest ever, and that's one of the greatest things I've ever seen in Grand Prix racing.
Somehow not touching as they go round Woodcote and on towards Cox, where Alonso passed Vettel on the outside a few laps ago, and on the inside Sebastian Vettel gets it done this time. No man wanted to yield, and in the end, for this fight, Vettel wins. To the top of Radion, and Magnussen has made up places at the start, but here comes Sebastian Vettel. He's neck and neck with Lewis Hamilton. Vettel is alongside and ahead. Ocon is also ahead. They're four abreast going into Le Coq. Vettel ahead of Hamilton, ahead of Perez, ahead of Ocon, ahead of Verstappen. Wow!
Sebastian Vettel, world champion in 2010, 11, 12, and now 13. Take a bow, son.
And for Sebastian Vettel, this was his opponent.
But Lucas Blakely has played things to perfection, and his reward is looking up and seeing the checkered flag first. Lucas Blakely takes the opening win of the year and wins for the first time in F1 Esports. What a phenomenal drive. What a way to take your first victory in this championship.
So how did a Formula One esports driver fare against a real Formula One world champion? Let's find out.
Car, which is the electric rallycross car that will be the headline spec vehicle for the World Rallycross Championship this season. Very good car control there from Lucas Blakely.
He impressed the judges yesterday when he was out in the Polaris, swings the back end around. There goes Vettel meanwhile. Blakely's looking comfortable enough out there. Won't have had a huge amount of practice.
Could we see our first upset of the weekend before we even get to the quarterfinals, Jack?
It would be quite remarkable, wouldn't it? Here comes Vettel, just dabbing on the brakes. Here is Lucas Blakely, the Scottish driver from just outside of Glasgow. Finished third in the F1 Esports Championship last year. Here comes Vettel over the hill towards the line. Oh, it's tight. Wow. And it's Blakely. It's Lucas Blakely by 800ths of a second quicker than Sebastian Vettel. What a remarkable performance from Lucas Blakely.
I've had so many people say, "Oh my God, that's in the history books now. No one can take that away from you. You know, I don't think you realise how massive that is, and I don't, because I don't feel like it even happened. It feels like, nah, that can't be right. You know, this kid from up in Scotland who's sitting in his bedroom, you know, it's not meant to happen. Do you know what I mean? It's like that.
So as you just heard, that was something that was not meant to happen, but it did. A sim racer whose experience was gathered in his bedroom managed to beat a 4-time Formula One world champion. By all means, this doesn't mean that he was better, but it showed that he could compete with the best. Now, imagine the amount of racers out there earning their stripes in their bedrooms right now, and imagine what the future can hold for them if esports continues to grow. But what you can expect is that the gamers are going to be there. And going back to the original question of can esports be sports? Well, that's a decision for you to make, but I hope that from what you've seen here today, that your decision is well informed. Thank you for watching.